Story time on how I found out that my imaginary friend at 5 years old was real. Okay, so I don't know about y'all, but I had an imaginary friend when I was 5 years old. So this was like 3 years ago, I want to say, something like that. It was Paranormal Day, and I was having a team meeting with my team. And my team lead was like, let's share some stories. Does anybody have stories to share? So everybody was sharing their story, and then it got to me, and they're like, Jasmine, do you have any stories to tell? And I'm like, as a matter of fact, I do. I told them I had an imaginary friend when I was 5. And it was so real to me that my brother, my mom, my dad, my aunts, my family, they would catch me talking to my friend in my room or in car rides or whatever the case was. This is where it gets freaky, and pay attention, stay till the end, because your mind will be blown, I swear. First of all, there is a cemetery down the street from my childhood home. And my aunt didn't work too far from us, and not too far from the cemetery. We'd have to pass the cemetery to get to her work, and we would go pick her up. Well, whenever we would leave the house, sometimes my friend wasn't with me. So I would tell my mom, like, Mom, like, my friend, I'm not going to say her real name. I'm going to say her name is Lisa. I would tell her, Mom, Lisa's not in the truck. Like, we have to go back and get her. And my mom at first was like, Jasmine, like, no, like stop playing. I'm like, no, Mom, for real. So I would get really mad and really sad. I would have to, like, I would make my mom turn around to go pick up my friend. So my mom would turn around to go back to the house, and when we would be getting to my house, I would say, oh no, never mind, Lisa's already here. And my mom was like, what the heck, dude? Like, okay, whatever. Shout out to my mom for listening to me to make me happy. So like I said, we would pass the cemetery, and one day my mom says that I told her, Mom, look, that's where my friend lives. That's where she told me she lives. And my mom's like, oh, really? And then I'm like, yeah. And I'm pointing at the cemetery. Mind you, I'm 5 years old. What 5-year-old knows what a cemetery is, right? So we go pick up my aunt, and my mom, she's like stunned, right? She's like, what the hell? She's been talking to this imaginary friend for some time now, and now she's telling me that her friend lives in a cemetery. Okay, if my daughter were to tell me that right now, my 5-year-old daughter were to tell me, I would be freaked out, right? So my mom was freaked out. We go pick up my aunt. This imaginary friend was so serious for me. At the time, my whole neighborhood would kind of play together. All the kids would play together. All the kids would come to my house and play with me because I had a little playground. Even the kids that were a little bit older than me, they would come and push me on the swings. We'd play tag, all of that, right? And after a while, they started getting freaked out because I would say, oh, don't forget to push my friend Lisa, or oh, don't forget to go tag my friend Lisa. And they were just like, Jasmine, like, I'll be back. I gotta go home real quick. So it was just a big deal. Okay, fast forward, right? So I'm telling my coworkers all this, right? And they're like, oh my God. We get off the call, and one of my coworkers messages me on Teams, and she says, hey, I'm curious. Did you ever go and look in the cemetery, what do you call it? The word just like left my mind. The cemetery directory or something like that, to see if there was in fact a little kid there by the name of your imaginary friend, to see if they're actually there. And I was like, you know what? Like, I never thought of that. Stay with me. This is where it all comes together, and where I was just blown away. Stay with me. I did that. I went to the directory of that cemetery, and I type in my imaginary friend's name. Long and behold, a little girl pops up with my imaginary friend's name. Okay, now this is how I linked it and confirmed it. Okay, so my grandma passed away in December of 2000. My friend Lisa, date of death is 3 months prior to my grandma passing away, right? Okay, stay with me. I dug a little deeper because I was like, okay, she's there, but where is she, right? Where my grandma's plot is, my friend, my imaginary friend, her plot is like 3 blocks down from my grandma, which is not far at all. And that just stunned the heck out of me, because she had just been buried. She had just been buried when we went to my grandma's burial. So I'm like, oh my God, I must have stepped over her stone. I must have walked past it. I don't know where she attached herself to me. So I did more research, like I said, because I really dug into this. I was like invested. Just the fact that she exists. She was like 6 or 7 years old when she passed away. I dug in deeper. I put in my city, I put in the name, I put in where she, when she passed away, just to see if I could find a story about her, right? And I did. And it's a very sad story, and it's very unfortunate, and I felt really bad. I also did research about, young children's spirits. And what I read, when children pass on, some of them are confused. They don't know what's going on, right? They don't know what just happened to them. So their souls sometimes stay grounded. They stay where, in certain places or whatever. If you want more information on that, you can go and research it. But I was just so like, oh my God, like I had to tell somebody. So I called my husband. I told my husband, I was like, oh my God, dude, check this out. After I talked to my husband, I called my dad, because my dad is one of the persons that is very well aware of my imaginary friend. Okay, I'm running out of time. Go to part 2 to hear the rest of the story.
When I tell this story to this day, people do not believe me. When I was a freshman in college, I was going to a private school in Pittsburgh. I was leaving the next year. I was going to a different school. So my friends and I, some of us were leaving, some of us were moving, whatever. We decided we wanted to kind of hit all the different spots in Pittsburgh that we really liked. So we went to like Mount Washington. For those of you who don't know, it's like a really nice lookout over Pittsburgh. And there was a place near our school, and it was called the Fountain of Youth. It was essentially just like a well that people in the town used to go to when it was in use. So we went there. It was nighttime. It wasn't like midnight. It was like 9 or so. It wasn't super late. We went there, and the way that this well was set up, it was like carved. There was a piece carved out of a rock formation, and then you'd walk in and then get water out of the well inside of it. So the people who were like shorter or smaller, they went inside. And like, I'm tall, so I wasn't gonna like go in there, but other girls were going inside and just like checking it out and seeing what it looked like. And the rest of us were standing outside, taking pictures, just like messing around, waiting, hanging out, talking. The girls inside, one of them said, hey, I can kind of hear like rocks moving around in here. It sounds like there's something else in here. And we were all like, oh, okay, well, that's probably an animal, so just like come out. So as she's like leaving and coming out and saying like, I can hear something in here, the girls who are outside, me specifically, my phone died, turned off completely. It was at 70-80%. It was not anywhere close to dying. Turned off, died. Other girls' phones started dying. Then we heard a growl. And it did not sound like an animal. It sounded more like a human being trying to mimic what an animal sounds like when they growl. And we found this out later, that the girls inside the cave heard the same exact thing coming from inside the cave. We heard it outside in the woods. We all run and book it to the car. We get back. We're all like, we're done. That's it. Whatever. I'm going to take a shower. I'm changing, and I see in the mirror handprints on my shoulder. Like someone just grabbed it like that and left those prints. I tell everybody, check yourselves, because I just found this on myself. The one girl who was in the well lifts up her shirt. I look, she has 3 scratch marks down her back. I was like, nope, we're done. I started praying. I said, if there's something attached to us, get it away from us. I want no part of that. And that was it.
So these are admittedly not my stories, they're my dad's stories. Just a little background on my father. He doesn't believe in ghosts at all. Not even a little. He thinks that that is made up. It's fake. And now that I've gotten that out of the way, he has experienced the scariest hauntings I've ever heard about in my life. When he was younger, I would say probably about like 9 to 13, in that age range, he had a friend that started getting into like kind of occult weird things. He started feeling a little bit uncomfortable around this friend, and he remembers two really specific incidents with this friend that made him stop hanging out with this kid. Um, one of which was they were at a river with a bunch of other boys, and they were swimming, playing as kids do. And this friend in question was in the water next to my father. And while they're playing, my dad looks up, and standing across the river at the tree line, and this is in rural Canada, like in the middle of nowhere, Canada, standing at the tree line is that friend. And he's just staring at my dad, and he just goes like this. Mind you, that kid is next to my dad at that time, so he's seeing two of them. And the other one just turns around and goes into the woods after beckoning my dad after him. I hate that story. It makes my eyes tear up. I hate that story. But my dad, being a child, still hung out with this kid. So he goes over to his house, and this kid is sitting in this big, like, lazy boy recliner chair. And he's sitting there, and he's kind of just staring at my dad while they're talking, acting super strange. And he looks at my dad and he goes, "I've been in your dreams." And as soon as he says that, my dad hears like pounding on the underside of this kid's chair. He's sitting cross-legged in his chair, not moving, and hears something beating on the underside of the chair. And this kid goes, "I've been in your dreams." And my dad, stone-faced, dead-ass, looks at me and goes, "And the fucked up thing? He had been in my dreams." My father doesn't believe in ghosts. I asked him to explain these to me in like a scientific way. He goes, "I was just hallucinating." I was just having a vivid hallucination. Anyway, those are just two of my favorite little stories from my father, who swears the ghosts are not real.
I live in Oregon, and a friend of mine was having her bachelorette party at a cabin in the woods at the base of a very well-known mountain. I was looking forward to going. A lot of people I care about were going to be on that trip, and I thought it sounded like a really fun weekend just to get away and be in nature. And the first thing that happened when I left my house and I was just on the outskirts of town, I got such a strong feeling to turn around and grab some cleansing tools like sage, Palo Santo, whatever I had on hand. And it was so strong, I turned the car around, went home. My husband's like, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Oh, I don't know. I just had to use the bathroom and I don't want to use the gas station." Totally fed him a line because I didn't want him to get worried. It was a really pleasant drive up there, a couple of hours. You're at least in the forest for, I'd say, 45 to 50 minutes before you find this house. This house. As soon as I pull up into the garage, I immediately just have this overwhelmingly heavy feeling that I really can't explain. Two other people had arrived. They were there taking care of a lot of the organizational details, and I walked in, and my two friends are standing in the kitchen here and here. These are pictures of the property. And I walk in, and automatically, just with my sensitivities, I am like, there is something up there that is funky, and I don't like it, and I don't want to go near it. I feel like I am being stared at, and it is highly dark, highly uncomfortable. And so my two friends in the kitchen are like, "Hey Meg, how's it going? We're glad you're here." I'm like, "Yeah, how are you guys doing?" They're like, "We're great." And I'm like, "Yeah. Other than the thing that's up those stairs that's been staring at you the whole time." And they were like, "Oh my God, we were waiting for you to get here because we just had such a weird feeling and we're freaked out and we wanted to know what you thought," because they know I've got like sensitivities or whatever. I walked up the stairs and I got to about this spot right here, and I stopped because I literally felt like an energetic wall, like, do not go any further. My friend said, that's really weird. That's literally as far as we went to before you got here. And we were, they were just checking out the house, and they went up into that weird little loft attic area, and they were like, nope, no further. This is the top of the stairs right here. And if you look way down in this loft area, there's a little door with a crawl space, and it was shut when we got there. As people started arriving, we were having fun joking, and one of the women went up there, and we were talking about how creepy it was, and she said, was the door open when you guys went up there? The crawl space door had been opened, and none of us had been up there. So that night, we're just kind of settling into the house, settling into the weekend, trying to figure out what's on the agenda, trying to have a good time. But if you're sensitive, you can just tell from these pictures, the place just had a creepy vibe. Those two same friends are sleeping in this room, and I am sleeping down here, downstairs, alone on a pull-out couch. First thing we notice is the incredible amount of dead insects all over the floor and even in the sheets. That night, one of my friends had her electronics go crazy at 3 a.m. I felt such a heavy layer of darkness. The first night I tried to go to sleep downstairs here on that pull-out couch, I felt like things were staring at me, circling me. I was this close to getting up and leaving in the middle of the night with a 2-hour drive home, rolling in at 5 a.m. with my husband, like, what are you doing? But I got this very clear message: you need to stay, and you need to help hold up some kind of energetic barrier. I had a dream when I eventually fell asleep that the entire property was surrounded by fire, and the fire couldn't penetrate this weird line that we were all trying to hold. So I was like, fine, okay, I guess I will stay in this freaky ass house. Next morning, we're all hanging out on the balcony and talking, having breakfast, having coffee, and people start to share their experiences. People were touched. People staying in the upstairs bedroom in the bunk beds had water dripped onto their faces, coming out of nowhere, and there were no leaks in the ceiling. It wasn't raining that weekend. Later that day, when most of the crew was playing yard games, like down here in the grass, one of the women was hanging out over here, and there was a deck of cards that literally got blown, and the cards were like flung into her face. I have no idea how that happened. At this point, I am getting so drained physically and feeling so sick, I need to go lie down. I'm alone in the house again, but I'm watching everybody from outside these windows where I'm at. Gosh, I can't point. And at this point, I'm just praying. Like, I'm here for a reason. These are people that I really care about and love, and I do not want to leave them here because I feel like I can be more helpful trying to hold off whatever this thing is. I did eventually run out to the corner store to test and make sure that the physical symptoms I was experiencing were really tied to the house and not just something going on with me. And as soon as I left the house, I felt so much better, but I had to come back. People were having personality changes while at the house. Like, they would start to withdraw, go take a shower, try and like snap out of it because they just felt something come over them. What I was picking up on primarily that kind of like lived in that upstairs loft area was something that was not nor had ever been human. This sounds really crazy because I've had run-ins with some really, really dark, start with a D word kind of entities. This wasn't even that. It almost felt like not from here, if you catch my drift. But it was, what I saw in my mind's eye was almost like a spidery looking thing. And it's interesting because another woman who was there told me that they saw a spidery looking image of this big nasty thing like crawl from up in this main area down the stairs into the loft area where we were sleeping. And what's odd is that the safe places in the house would change depending on the time of day. It's like the rooms would just start to feel off. Another person said they were almost picking up on the presence of a man, like an older man. I wasn't picking up on a person, dead or alive, definitely a thing. The second night, one of my friends and I were just so uncomfortable about the idea of going to sleep that we just stayed up kind of deliriously talking to each other until, God, it must have been close to 4 a.m. just to not be asleep and unconscious in that environment. What's so weird and actually kind of miraculous if you think about it is that the bride was not affected. She was the only one out of all of us who had no idea what was going on, because she was in her soon to be wed splendor. And also, this particular person has an incredible amount of spiritual protection around her. So we were all really grateful for that, and we'd kind of like whisper about what happened to you last night and this happened to me in the bathroom earlier, and we were all just kind of keeping it out of the realm of awareness of the bride, fortunately. By the last morning, I'll never forget, one of my friends had set up a beautiful create your own crepe kind of buffet line, and we were all sitting down around at breakfast, trying to eat and just feeling so uncomfortable, ready to get the heck out of there. Someone said, "So you picking up on anything, Megan?" And it's interesting because at that moment I felt just this overwhelming cloud, almost like darkness from every angle just starting to swoop in. And I said, I think it's time to go. The way everybody collectively pushed back from this table and popped up and got up and grabbed their stuff and started hauling ass out of there, it was like a scene in a movie. Other guests had weird experiences. I checked the book, paused to read. If anybody knows who this was, I would love to talk to you about your experience. This one's a little weird. I think some dude had a freaky experience and then leaned into the weirdness and hopefully just exaggerated because they didn't know what to make of it. We all stood outside of that house and we held hands in a circle, and I kind of led everybody through a grounding and protective and clearing exercise because it was so vile. The husband-to-be was actually having his stag party down the road, and they came over because they heard whispers and rumors about what was happening to us that weekend, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna run in and we're gonna take care of it." When they saw the look on our faces and they heard me say absolutely nobody's going into that house, they decided not to go in. I got in my car and was completely silent and white-knuckled my grip on the steering wheel until the tree line broke about an hour later and I was getting closer to home. I burst into tears and started sobbing, because up until that point, I had never faced anything that dark or malevolent in my life. A few of us called each other after to process what had happened. It was wild.
I'm going to tell you guys about the most haunted, psychotic experience I ever had with the paranormal while I drank my coffee. When I first got a divorce, I moved into this house with this girl that I grew up going to middle school with. That's a story for another time, horrible roommate experience. However, we moved into this little yellow old house. It was cute though. Hold on, I'm actually gonna try to find a picture of the house real quick and then I'll show it to you. So I said it was cute, it's not that cute. But it felt so freeing because it was the first time that I was living on my own ever in my entire life with a roommate, but after divorce. So I have 2 kids. Eventually these people moved out and it was just myself and my 2 daughters living in this house. I started to notice that my youngest, she was like 3 at the time, that she was wanting to spend a lot of time by herself alone in her bedroom, which is not like her at all in general. She's a very Velcro child, always has been, but she wanted to spend alone time in her room. I would kind of like let her be in there, and I started to notice that she was shutting the door. Once I started to notice that she was doing that, I started to go over and listen through the door, and I noticed that she was talking to herself. And I was like, okay, I mean, normal. She's 3. She's talking to herself. But then she started talking what it seemed like to another person, and I thought, okay, well, also quite normal. She's 3. She probably has some sort of like imagination play going on. So I didn't think too much of it, but I did start opening the door and saying, hey, baby, like we got to keep the door open. And she would get upset. She'd get pretty angry and annoyed, and she wanted to keep the door shut. And she started to say that her friend didn't want to have the door open, that her friend wanted to have the door shut while they played. So I said, okay, I understand, baby, but where you have to keep the door open for safety purposes. I started to just be a little bit curious about this friend that she had and this imagination that she was experiencing. When she went to sleep, I guess like at some point around that time, I started to ask her, so like what kind of games do you and this friend play? Like what's this friend's name? She told me this friend's name is Penelope. And in the room, they had these sliding closet doors. And she goes, yeah, her name's Penelope. She lives in the closet. I said, okay. She said, she's a little girl like me, mommy, and she doesn't like you very much. I was interested about that. It's like, why does my daughter have a imaginary friend who doesn't like me? Like, what could this mean psychologically, right? So I was like, okay, well, why doesn't she like me? She goes, well, she says that you're not a good mommy, that you're a mean mommy. And I said, okay. She said, well, her mommy died. She's 3. We didn't have any death in the family. We don't have conversations about death. Like, nothing. Like, we don't have death at that point. She was like, yeah, well, her mommy died and they lived here. But at that point, I was like, that's a little bit weird. But I still was thinking, this is probably an imaginary friend situation. I probably need to just try to figure out why she's created this storyline. I don't know how she could have possibly created this storyline. I noticed that this pattern of her wanting to spend time in her room and be alone, like that kind of just got stronger and stronger. She always wanted to play with Penelope. She started to kind of be really insistent that she got to shut the door while she was in the bedroom. Her defiance toward me got very extreme during this time. So I was just kind of curious about it. Well, one night they were gone. They were at their dad's house. And I, at this time in their life, I used to sleep in their room when they were gone. I know that's kind of weird. This is getting too long. I'll tell you the rest of the story in part 2.
I'm going to tell you a ghost story. It's a true ghost story. And I believe that whatever it is has followed me here. And I think that because of this all over my windows. Now this is a new place, second floor. As you can see, I'm on the second floor. And this is on the outside of the window. First, I'm going to tell you a story that you're probably not going to believe, and I really don't care if you do or don't. Last night, I saw my friend Laura. She has been my friend since we were in first grade. We hadn't seen each other in like 5 years, but we always run into each other at some point. And she was like, hey, do you remember the CDs in your old house? Which got us reminiscing. Now, Laura was not somebody who believed in ghosts or anything, but the house I grew up in was extremely, I'll say paranormally charged. I don't know if it's ghosts. I don't know what it is because I don't even know what I believe in, but things defied physics there. And there was one day in particular, we were hanging out in my room. I think we were in like 7th grade or something. And it was just like a regular sized bedroom. And I had one of those CD racks. So it was just like CDs. And it took up like most of the wall. And we were just hanging out. It was the middle of the day. And the CDs flew, I'm not joking, flew across the room and hit the wall behind me. Now my mom's in the other room. So she starts freaking out because she's like yelling. She's like, what are you girls doing? Blah, blah, blah. And Laura's petrified and I'm petrified. And I tell my mom, and my mom's like, oh, okay. My mom just immediately believes me, which was insane to me because I was like, you just believe that they flew across the room and hit the wall? And she's like, yeah, I've seen stuff like that happen when I was a kid, so I believe you. Oh, okay. Now we're going to fast forward to my senior year of high school. I was at Laura's house, and I had a cell phone, and my mom called me, and we were just shooting the shit or whatever, and the line went dead. No big deal. So she calls me back like a minute or two later, and she's pissed. And she's like, what do you think you're doing? And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, get home now. Like, that's not funny. And I was like, what's not funny? She's like, don't mock me. Get home now. That's totally unacceptable. What's wrong with you? I didn't raise you to speak to me this way. And I'm confused. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, you're trying to show off in front of your friend. And I'm like, I literally don't know what you're talking about. So anyway, I told Laura, I was like, I gotta go. My mom was like pissed at me. So I get home and my mom is super mad at me. And I'm trying to like pry out of her. Like eventually she could kind of tell that I really didn't seem to know what she was talking about. So she was like, okay, well, blah, blah. So I showed her my phone and like when the call ended. And she was like, that's so weird. Because she said that when she was talking to me, I started like copying everything she said. So she was like, so what are you girls doing? So what are you girls doing? Are you mocking me? Are you mocking me? But she said it sounded like me. Now, mind you, I'm not on the phone. Do I believe my mom? Like, yeah, because I trust her and she has no reason to lie. But like, it was also kind of unbelievable. And she kind of did and didn't believe me at the same time. So it was one of those things where we were just kind of like, okay. Right? Moved on. The following day happens. Me and my mom are at home. Now my stepdad, very loud man. Big, loud man. We had a dog named Sammy at the time. She was a big, loud dog. So we hear the front door open. And mind you, it's a 1-story ranch house, very small. So we can hear everything that goes on in the house. We hear door open, loud boot stomping, the, things that dads do, right? We hear him walk through the house and then Sammy, come on. At the back door, we hear Sammy get up and walk to the back door. And then we hear her sitting there. And we hear like, and stuff. So we're like, what? We didn't hear the back door open. So we go out. Sammy's sitting at the back door like, is somebody going to let me out? And my stepdad's nowhere to be found. So we look in the backyard. We're like looking, nowhere to be found. So we let Sammy out. And we realize my stepdad's truck is not in the driveway. So my mom calls a cell phone. And he's like, hey, wife, what's up? And she's like, what do you mean, what's up? Where did you just go? And he's like, I'm at Home Depot.
Now, mind you, we live in the middle of the country, so, like, Home Depot was, like, 25 minutes away. And I was like, what do you mean you're at Home Depot? He's like, oh, I'm just getting some blah, blah, blah. Like, he's a construction worker. And he was like, why, what's going on? And she's like, get home now, get home now. So now, all of a sudden, me and my mom believe each other fully about what happened on the phone the day before. My stepdad comes home, and he thinks we're fucking with him. Like, he's not having it. He doesn't think it's funny. He thinks it's, like, really weird. He thinks, like, we're kind of, like, conspiring against him. Like, he doesn't know why we're doing this. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, he thinks this is some kind of fucked up, weird, sick joke. And he gets really, really pissed at me and my mom. Like, it ended up in, like, a big argument between my mom and my stepdad where I honestly thought they were going to break up. It was really bad. It's the following day. My stepdad is home, I'm home, my mom is home. I had a swing that was out in my front yard. I would, like, swing on it. Me and my mom are just talking out in the front yard. And my stepdad comes outside. And he looks like... I don't really know how to describe it because I don't feel like I've really seen my stepdad scared ever. Like, maybe, like, once or twice when I was super sick. But, like, I've never really actually seen the guy scared. He's, like they say in the movie, like, white as a ghost. Like, he looks like he just saw a ghost. He has the house phone in his hand, and he's just like, we're like, what? And he hands the phone to my mom. My mom was like, hello? And she, like, and I'm like, what? And they're both looking at me, like horrified, right? And I'm like, what? And I was like, what's going on? What did they say? And I'm like, Mom, who was it? And, like, she doesn't want to give me the phone. I'm like, Mom, just give me the phone. So I'm like, hello. And I hear, like, I don't even know how to describe it, like, and then the loudest screaming I've ever heard in my life, where it was, like, crackling the phone. But it sounded like multiple different, I'm, like, shaky. It was so scary. Okay, it was, like, multiple voices, like, at once. And they sounded, like, demonic or something. It was really, like, so loud and scary. And so I just, like, I don't remember if I hung up the phone or I just handed it back to my mom, but I was, like, really fucking scared. Because it was, like, the scariest thing I've ever heard. And I was like, to my stepdad, like, did you hear that? And he was like, yeah, that was you. And I was like, what? Him and my mom both heard me talking. But I'm right in front of them not saying anything, right? So they didn't hear the scream. They heard me. Which is why they were looking at me like, what the fuck, right? So we go in the house. My mom had to call her ID. The house phone was calling itself when I called. So then my mom was doing some witchy stuff at the time. What came first, the chicken or the egg? Who am I to say? But she does a little whatever, tries to get this whatever thing to go away. And it did for a while. And then that was, like, over the summer, right? And then we're going to fast forward to, like, November. Because we abruptly moved on Thanksgiving Day. Because things got so outrageous. So, there's a phenomenon that happened when I was younger, like in middle school. I had carpeted floors in my room. And it sounded like and felt like you could hear the vibration on the floor. Like someone was taking handfuls of change and dropping it on the floor right next to my bed as loud as they could and as hard as they could. And, I mean, it would wake the whole house up. It was incredibly loud. It was very startling. And it would happen almost every night, very unpredictably. But it just stopped one day. And we all kind of just collectively as a family decided to not try to figure out what was going on there. There were, like, a number of other creepy things that were happening. Okay. I don't want to be one of these go to part 2 people, but it only lets me go for 10 minutes. So I'm going to have to make a part 2 because the second part is going to be, like, probably not as long, but it has to do with the scratches.
I'm going to tell you guys about the scariest paranormal experience I've ever had in my life. Little quick context, I grew up in a very scary haunted house. I accidentally a Ouija board when I was 6, so I was constantly followed by terrifying experiences my whole life. So this specific time, I think I was 12 years old. Sorry, excuse that beeping in the background. And at the time, I had this loft bed. So it's kind of like when you go to college, the dorm beds, right? You have the ladder and the bed is on top, and then underneath you have all of your space. So I had one of those until I was like 12 or 13. And I used to see such scary shit in my house that I loved being up high because, where'd my light go? Okay, that was so rude. The sun, like, covered it. Anyways, I love my loft bed because I like to be able to see what was going on around me. I felt like I almost had immunity being able to see up high and being able to see my doorway. So one of these specific times, I had several spirits. It's a different story in my home, but one of them was the most antagonizing one. His name was Seth, and it was a straight from hell experience. This was not a friendly spirit. This was an evil entity that latched onto me the most. So Seth would fuck with me all the time. He was terrifying looking. He was tall. He would have to bend down to come into my door, and then he would come into my door and he would look at me frequently. And I remember one night, I would go to sleep terrified almost every night, crying. I would beg my parents to give me sleeping pills. I even had them take me to the doctor because I thought I had insomnia. I was just so scared I could not sleep anywhere. So essentially this one night, I'm in bed, in this loft bed, and it's important to note really quick, it's a metal ladder. So you can really hear like the little ting 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 as you're walking up the ladder, okay? And it was October during this time. We had this jar downstairs, this glass jar that was shaped like a pumpkin, and my mom would put, you know, pretzels in it or candy corn or whatever. Very distinct part of the story though, it's important to remember. I was upstairs, all the rooms are upstairs. This pumpkin jar is in the kitchen downstairs, right? So with this pumpkin jar, when you lifted it up to get a snack and you set the jar lid back down, it would make a very loud sound every time you would close it. You could just hear the glass clinking. And so I remember one night I had the OG iPod Touch, like the first one ever. It was my best present, and I would literally watch YouTube videos on it back when YouTube was a little icon and it was built into like the iPod. It wasn't an apps download. I would watch YouTube videos because I was always so afraid to fall asleep without sound or noise because I kept seeing and hearing terrifying shit. So I'm watching YouTube videos, normal routine, it's 2 a.m. And like, even when I was young still, like I shouldn't have been staying up that late and waking up that early. I had school, all that, but I was just too scared. So I'm watching YouTube videos, and all of a sudden I hear the sound of the pumpkin jar clinking. Like I literally hear it opening and shutting, opening and shutting. And so anyways, I had this pumpkin jar, right? And I hear it's opening, closing, opening, closing. I knew no one was awake because I could see very clearly from the little view I had in that loft everybody's room. I have to walk past, kind of get down to the stairs. So I turned off my video. I remember I paused it and I was just listening there in fear, hearing this jar downstairs go open and shut and open and shut. And then it stopped. And it was quiet for like 2 minutes. I was still sitting there, frozen, video was still on pause, 12 years old. And anyways, all of a sudden it sounds like there's running up the stairs, like someone is absolutely barreling up the stairs, and then it just stops. And my heart rate, I remember I was so scared. I wanted to say something, but like my parents started believing me with stuff, so I kind of struggled a little bit with that in silence. I was too scared to call for anybody. I didn't really know what to do, and this also happened a lot of the time. So I kind of waited there for a minute and I held my breath, and after a couple minutes I didn't hear anything. So I thought I was maybe overreacting, hearing things, or it could have been my dog. So I used to justify a lot of what I went through. So I turned my video back on, and then I start hearing laughing, like maniacal laughing and heavy breathing. I press pause immediately. Right when I press pause, I don't hear anything. I play the video and I hear the laughing again. And at this point I was like, hey, I just need to go to sleep. So I put the blanket over my head, played my video on the old little YouTube app on that iPod Touch, and was just trying my best to not look at anything, because I thought maybe I'm psyching myself out, being out of the blanket, looking at stuff, looking for things, you know, being crazy. And it was so clear and vivid on these steps of this loft bed. Like when you could hear anybody, when I would get in the bed, you could just hear like that metal clinging, like it was impossible not to hear it. Out of nowhere, I fucking hear clink. And I knew it was the bottom step. And I remember my blood just ran super cold. And then I heard the laughing start, and then it stopped immediately. And then I heard clink, like the second step going up. I remember I was so scared. It's so hard to like play this background noise. It doesn't probably sound that bad in that moment. Just hearing someone come up the steps to your bed, but knowing that no one's there, no one's in your house. And then I hear another clink. And then I hear one more, because there's two more to get to the top. One more, and then I hear the second one, which just means now if you're climbing with your hands, that's all 5 steps. Then it's silent. And I remember just not knowing what to do at all, panicking, freaking out. And then I heard the laugh, but it was so much closer, so much louder, so much more absolutely terrifying. And once I heard the laugh again, I honestly can't really recall what I did. But the blanket, remember how in my stories where I've touched on feet and demonic entities love feet? That's again a different story for me, a different time. I will break that down for you guys if you want me to. this is where the feet origin started. And I mean, it was before the story. It happened to me for my whole childhood. But I just remember feeling the blanket ever so slightly pull up to where literally just my toes were out. And then it felt like someone was doing this to my toes. Then I stood up, I started screaming, crying. Parents wake up, come in there, and they're like, oh, you're just having a nightmare. I can't tell you exactly why that experience stuck so hard with me. And all these years, I'm literally afraid of loft beds to this day. My kid will never get a loft bed. I remember when I was in college, we had those, like the dorm beds, and I was scared with 3 roommates in the room, just the little PTSD, because then after the incident, it happened like 2 more times. That's probably the most memorable thing for me in that house.
All right, if you don't like real life ghost stories, then you're going to want to skip this video. But if you do, then stick around. When I was a kid, my father started dabbling with the occult. He joined a group of Rosicrucians, which is a witchcraft cult. And he would bring some items to the apartment where we lived in after work, and he would go into the bedroom, lock himself in. If we were in there, he'd, have us leave. And he would perform some sort of ritual or God knows what. We weren't allowed in. He didn't tell us what he was doing, but it was something to do with the witchcraft. Strange things started happening in the apartment. But eventually my mother left him and we had to move in with family. And of course we were very poor. So we all shared a bedroom. My mother and my sister slept in one bed. I slept in a smaller bed next to them. One night, I remember waking up at about 3 in the morning. I had been waking up at about 3 in the morning every night for a while. But on this particular night, I woke up and I was just laying there awake. And I had turned and I was facing my mother and sister's bed, when suddenly I see this blue light come out of my mother. This bright, brilliant, indescribable light that I've never seen before or since. When this light came up, it was like my mother laying there on the bed, and this thing just came up like this. It sat up. It was what you would call a ghost, a spirit, and it was my mother. Same hair, same face, same torso, arms, and because it was sitting there, the blue in her legs, it was still just sitting there like inside her legs, but her torso, she kind of sat up on the bed with her arms back, like when you're about to get up out of bed, and it's staring forward. And I guess it sensed that I was looking at it, and so it turned to look to me. And when it looked at me, again, the visible appearance of it was identical to my mother, but there was something strange in her look. It didn't have the look that my mother gives. It didn't have that same stare, that same glare or look that my mother had. When a loved one looks at you and they're not okay, anyway, it was off. It was foreign. It was strange. And it was looking at me almost as if it was confused as to why I was looking at it. It was confused that I was in its presence, almost as if it was strange to it that I was looking at her. And this freaked me out. Of course, after a few seconds, and I guess after I absorbed it and processed it in my 5-year-old mind, I began to scream bloody murder. And it looked at me, it was still looking at me, and when I started to scream, it just kind of went, and it turned back forward and it laid back down. One of the things that really stood out to me was, as bright and brilliant as this thing was, it wouldn't give off any light. It didn't give off light into the room, onto the wall, onto me. It was all contained there. And it was the most brilliant blue light. I've never seen anything like it before, anything like it since. It was a blue, almost like this color blue, but just imagine super bright. And so after it laid down and I started screaming, I jumped out of the bed And I went over to my mother's bed and I was trying to find comfort in her, but she wasn't waking up. I was basically dancing and jumping around on the bed, and it roused my sister, my older sister, who was at the time 12. And she just kind of was like, "What's wrong? Go back to bed." And I guess she thought I was having a nightmare. The next morning, I go up to my mother and she's getting ready for work. She worked at a restaurant, and I'm trying to tell her about what happened and if she remembered what happened. And I said, "Mom, can I tell you something?" And she said, "Not now, mijo, I don't have time. I'm getting ready for work." I tried the next day, and apparently I tried for about 2 weeks, my mother recounts, because after about 2 weeks of me going up to her saying, "Mom, I got to tell you something," it hit her and she said, "Okay, what's wrong with this kid? Something's on his mind and he needs to tell me something. I better pay attention." And so I recounted the story that I just told you, and she had zero recollection of this. And that was strange. And she asked me to tell it to her more than once. Over the next, few weeks, she was just shocked. She told family about it. And the story didn't change because it's a memory. It's not a story. So even years later, we remember this. This is one of the things that stood out. These things, when you're dabbling with things like witchcraft, these kinds of things will follow you around for years. This is one of many experiences. So if you're interested in hearing more about this, let me know. Drop a comment. Let me know what you think about what I just told you about. And tell me if that would freak you out.
Hi friends, my name is Liera, and I lived in my own horror movie for 3 years. I want to get into part 1 of that story. I also wanted to say thank you so much to anybody that commented or liked that video or followed me because of it. The fact that people care about what I have to say at all about anything means so much to me, honestly. So, it made me so happy. So thank you so much. If you like ghost stories, the paranormal, the unexplained, anything like that, give me a follow. I'm going to get into this story. It's not all my TikTok is about, but it's definitely going to be my main focus for a little bit. If you like it, stick around. I want to give, though, as part of part 1, I want to just give a tiny bit of backstory real quick. I feel like it's important just to kind of set the scene. And it just it adds to the story. So, and then I'm going to start with kind of the small things, the red flags that were missed, the small things, and then how they progressed into the big things. The big things, like I said, I'm going to kind of do story times with those for sure as well. But to start off, so until I was 11, we lived in the house I was born in. I have 2 older sisters and 2 parents, and we lived in that house. Everything was great. Nothing weird ever happened there, whatever. We moved out when I was 11, and we moved into a super tiny apartment, and it was above my grandparents. So for that reason, I loved it because I could run down and hang out with my grandparents, but it was too small for us. Now at this time, my older sisters had both moved out, so they weren't in the house. So the apartment was just me and my parents, but it was definitely too small for the 3 of us. So once the lease was up, we needed to leave. Now this was 2006 or 7, 2000, I think 2007. Money was tight. The recession was about to pop up. So we needed something really fast. And lo and behold, we find this huge house that is dirt cheap to rent per month. First missed red flag. Why was it so cheap? Didn't really need any repairs. It was a nice house. I mean, it was weird. Now, here's the biggest thing about that house is it is a church parsonage. I'm going to make a video too. I want to show you guys pictures, and I also want to go down to the house itself. I live literally 4 minutes away from it, and I want to film so I can tell you guys stories and kind of show you because one involves a window, something that we saw from outside. I want to show you guys that window so you can really see what I'm talking about. But anyway, we go to look at the house, and first immediate red flag. The upstairs is much dirtier, dustier and everything than the downstairs is. And my mom or dad mentioned something about it to the person that was showing us the house. And they were like, sorry, I got a weird back cramp. And they were like, oh, the guy who lived here before barricaded the stairs and never went upstairs. Now there's 2 bathrooms in the house, but there's only one with a shower, and that's upstairs. So the downstairs bathroom only has a toilet and a sink. So he went to the lengths to not go upstairs, that he would go other places to take a shower. Why we thought that was normal is beyond me. it makes perfect sense in hindsight because most of the terrifying, awful things happened upstairs. So, I mean, I get it. I'm so curious what he saw to eventually get him to that point, but I could take a wild guess. So anyhow, first missed red flag. Other guy never went upstairs. Second red flag, my dad and I are walking up into the attic, and so you walk up, it's like 4 steps, and then like a little kind of cubby on the side. You can open up the door. A person would fit in there, but it's kind of small, whatever. I don't know why I said a person. That sounded creepy. But anyway, then you turn, you're on a little landing, and then you go further up the stairs. But in between the stairs here, there's like a slanted wall. So if you were coming down the stairs or up the stairs, you could jump onto this slanted wall. Why you would do that, though, I have no clue. But there were like shoe prints in the dirt, like sliding down this wall. Now, that could be explained, I suppose. Somebody could have been painting. That's about the only reason I can imagine you would be on that little wall, though. There's not another good reason. So that was bizarre. We get up into the attic, and there's 4 rooms in the attic. So there's one right in front of you, one right beside that, one down this hall, and one down this hall. Now, the one that would have been right to our left had a big window in it, and it looks out onto the street. The people that were showing us the house told us that nothing was left there, that they had checked it, nobody left belongings, nothing, absolutely nothing, 0 belongings. There was a rocking chair, like right in front of this window. Now, again, I guess that's not super weird, although it is weird to me because there's multiple windows in the house. Like, why are you looking out the attic one? But regardless, it also explainable. But the rocking chair was like weird. We kind of looked at each other like, okay. That's about it with the attic. We then go down to the basement. This is where I know for a fact, like, we both felt something and we didn't say it to each other. But I remember looking at my dad, and now my dad, here's some backstory. He was a preacher at the time. He is not scared of anything, really. He's like the toughest, bravest guy I know. And we walked down these basement stairs, and I will never be able to put into words the feeling that I felt walking down those stairs. It was like this heaviness that I could physically feel my chest getting tighter, and like I can almost feel it as I'm describing it right now. And just like the air almost being sucked out of my lungs each step I went down. And we get to the bottom, and I kind of look at my dad, and I was like, it's kind of creepy down here. And he was like, mm-hmm. And when he doesn't say much, I know it's because something's going on in his head. There's like 7 rooms in this basement, and it is horrifying. The one room that has the washer and the dryer in it has clearly, like, at one time had bunk beds on the wall, almost the whole way to the ceiling, then to the floor. No mattresses or anything, but you could tell that's what it was. I have no clue who was sleeping down there or why. Then the other rooms, there was not much in them, but still, we had this horrible feeling. And then we go into the last room, and there's one of those bricks. When a building is built, or in this case, a house, and they'll put like one of those bricks or like stones in there that says the year. We see one of those, and it's in the wall, and says, I need to look it up. I think 1862, but I want to be sure, so I will look that up. So we see one of those, and then right under it is this hole in the floor. And we look, and we can see like water in it. So my dad grabs a stick. Conveniently, there's like a big stick in the corner of the room, and he's like putting it down through, and it's not ending. It's just never ending. And he pulls it back up, and there's just like dark water just kind of dripping. And we're just looking at each other, and I could tell he knew he needed to say something to comfort me, because I'm like, what the actual helly is going on? He was like, I'll have to look into that. So many red flags that were missed. But regardless, I loved all of the space. I'm becoming a teenager. I want to have friends over. I want my own space. I need it. We needed something fast. My mom had a lot of doubts. My mom kept saying, I have a bad feeling about this. She was so valid and so right to have those feelings, and we really should have listened to her, but we did not. After a few weeks, we packed up. Now, here's the crazy thing too. I don't remember moving in there. I just remember, boom, we're there. So I think that's where I'm going to leave this off for now. Once I get to part 2, we will start with being in the house once we are moved in, the things that started to happen and kind of how they progressed and progressed and progressed. If anybody has any questions at all, feel free to ask me. I'm an open book. I do not care. I will answer pretty much anything. And again, thank you for being here. I will probably put up part 2 tonight, tomorrow at the latest. All right, thank you. Bye. All right, guys, it's Liera, and you are back for part 2 of how I lived my own horror story for 3 years. I look a complete mess. Ignore my hair, please, begging you. It'll get fixed soon. Anyhow, so where we left off, we had just officially moved into the house. Now, I would say for about 3 weeks, probably 3 weeks to a month, nothing happened. Nothing major happened. What I will say, though, is from the moment I stepped in that house until the day that I left that house for good, I never, ever, ever felt alone. I constantly felt like I was being watched. The amount of times I'd be like looking over my shoulder, looking around, thinking I like heard something behind me. And you know when like, sorry, a freaking telemarketer called me. Anyway. So you know when somebody walks up to you and they, you can like feel like warmth from them or like the air of them like moving? That would happen to me all the time. And sometimes it would be freezing cold air though. Sometimes it was warm, sometimes it was freezing cold. And it constantly felt like somebody just like walked up and like was watching me, was with me. Turns out my parents always felt that too. They just didn't tell me, but they felt the exact same way. So that went on for a few weeks. And then the very first thing, I will never forget, the very first thing that happened, the room that I had moved into was huge and it scared me at night. It was so dark. It was so big. I couldn't see. My bed was towards the front of the room and there was a bunch of rooms still behind me. It's kind of like L-shaped like this, a wall. My bed was right along that wall and then the rest of the room was behind me where the closet was, dresser, all of that. So it scared me. It was expansive and I was used to a very small space. At this point, I never really had cable. I didn't watch much TV, but I begged my parents, can I please have a TV in my room? And they were like super anti-TV in the room. But I was like, I just need the light, the sound, something to make me feel like I'm not alone in there or, you know, whatever. My dad finds this old TV and it's like tiny and whatever, but he's like, you can have this in your room. It had like 3 channels on it and they were news channels as far as I knew. It always just seemed like the news. So couple nights with the TV, everything was fine. And then probably on the 3rd or 4th night of having the TV, I was in a dead sleep and I wake up because mass, like Catholic mass music is blaring on this TV, on a channel I did not know existed. And it was like a funeral and they were singing. Now, I did go to Catholic school, but I'm not super familiar with Catholicism. So I don't know like what they were saying, but it was like, like the repetitive, like monotone little things, but it was blaring. I did not know this TV got that loud. So I get up and I'm like trying to turn it down. I'm trying to turn it down. And it's not turning down. It's not turning down. I'm like, what is going on? And then boom, the TV just shuts off. I got the sickest feeling in my stomach. It really didn't sit right with me. I was like, what in the world was that? Sorry, I get anxious talking about this. But I told my parents in the morning and they were like, what's an old TV? Like, it's going to do weird stuff. So I'm like, okay. That situation ended up happening until I finally just got rid of that TV for good. It happened for months. I would just wake up randomly and that station would be blaring. I could never find that station. When I would try to go through the channels, so there was like 4 of them. Like I said, there was like 3 or 4 of them. I couldn't find that channel. But somehow, right around 3 a.m., every single night, it would blare. Unsure. But I chalked it up to, it's an old TV. Next situation that I remember happening all the time. Now, remember, this was like 2007, 2008, so we still use stereos. And I had a big stereo, and to turn the volume up and down on it, you literally had to turn a knob on the front of it. That's the only way you could turn it up and down. And I would be getting ready and have my stereo on, and it would just start to blare. Then it would just go way down. Then it would blare. Then it would go way down. Then it would be back to normal. And I didn't think much about it the first few times that it happened. And then I looked back the one time, and I didn't see the knob moving, but I did see the numbers going up. So it would be like 41, 42, 43, like volume-wise, and then go back down. So the numbers were moving somehow. And I tell my parents, well, it's an old stereo. So, again, excuses were made. The The third thing that I remember happening, and keep in mind, this is in like a 2 to 3 month period. So this is happening like back to back to back. Every day it's getting worse, and I'm getting more and more scared every single day. I really want to find you guys pictures of the inside of the house, because I wish you could like picture what I'm saying about my room, but it's kind of hard to explain. I'll try. I'll see what I can do. So one night I am asleep and I'm in my bed, and like I said, there's all the room behind me, the bed's here, the door's like kind of right at my feet. And by this point, I didn't have the TV anymore, so I was still scared of the dark. So I would sleep with my door about halfway open, which I had never done before. My parents are like, fire safety, you should keep the door closed when you're asleep, but I had to keep it halfway open. I needed some light from the hallway to come in. It was the only way I could fall asleep at that point. So I'm in a dead sleep, and when you're about to fall asleep and then you have that like feeling like you just fell, and it like jolts you awake. I had that, but instead of feeling like I was falling, it sounded like somebody screamed, "Hey," really loud, but it was like it came from my head almost. It's hard to explain it. Like, it didn't feel like it was somebody in the room screaming. It was like coming from me almost. And I sat right up and I looked at the door, and when somebody like stands in front of a light, obviously it's going to block the light. I could tell that the light was being blocked by something. So I was thinking, are my parents in the bathrooms? The bathroom was right across the hall. And I could tell that it was being blocked by something smaller than my parents. And I'm looking and I'm like, is it my dog? Fun fact, our dog refused to go upstairs. Refused. She would put a paw on the stair to try, and she would look up, and then she would take her paw back down. There were times she would stand at the bottom of those stairs and growl. And like that man that had lived there previously, he never went upstairs. She refused. I would beg her. I really wanted her to sleep in my room. She would not go up those stairs. Ever. Ever. So I figured it wasn't her, but I leaned out and I looked. And this is going to sound crazy, and I know it's weird to explain, whatever, especially if you've never experienced it, but I saw the shadow, and I just immediately knew it was like a little kid. It wasn't necessarily like human form. There was no face, I couldn't see clothing, nothing like that, but the way the shadow was, I knew, I could just tell. And it turned towards me. I could tell that it did. And then it moved and it went down the hallway, and it kind of just disappeared into the attic door, because the attic door was in the hallway as well. And I remember knowing at that point, like, either I am going completely crazy and something is really severely wrong with me, or this house is truly, truly haunted and I'm so scared it's going to get worse. I tell my parents. And they're like, well, you woke up from your sleep and maybe you were dreaming. Maybe it was all a dream. Maybe you were just, so tired that you just thought you saw a shadow and whatever. Okay. I'm not explaining it away at this point. I'm done with the excuses. Like, no, something's going on. The day after that happened, that night that I saw the shadow and it went into the attic, the day after that happened, I was opening my closet. Keep in mind, we're living here at this point about 4 or 5 months. I had been in and out of this closet a million times, getting stuff in and out of this closet. The day after that happened, I happened to notice on the inside of my closet door, in plain view, I don't know how I ever missed it. When you measure a kid, like on a door, you get a little pencil and then you measure them the next year and the next year. There was one of those on the door, and the name was Mary Jane. And it started when she was 3 and it ended when she was 8. And I showed my parents and I'm like, look at this. What if something happened to this little girl here? And I'm like, it ends at 8. And they're like, she probably just moved, which, valid point. But the fact that I saw it the day after that happened really stuck with me. I felt like I was meant to see it. I ended up seeing that it sounds insane to say that little girl, but like that particular shadow, I'm sorry, I'm trying not to sound insane. It didn't really scare me all that bad. And that's another reason I knew, I think it was just something trapped there that wasn't evil or malevolent. I think I just said that word wrong. And we'll get into those things for sure. But this was the first where it was like, I saw with my own eyes, like something is in this house and it's trying to communicate with me and something is going on. And from here on out, it just gets progressively crazier and crazier and crazier. I'm going to end this one here. I really want to talk though about that room that I was in. I only ended up staying in that room for about probably the first 5-6 months. Shortly after I found height thing in the closet. I ended up moving out of that room. We'll get to that. That room was one of the worst rooms in the entire house. And I really want to tell you guys about the nightmares that it would give you, to the point people were acting things out that had never slept walk, had never slept talk. It would put the deepest, darkest nightmares into your brain. The worst nightmares I've ever had in my life I had in that room. Same with my sister, same with my mom, same with my dad. So we'll get into that next time. Thank you for listening. All right. Again, ask any questions, leave a comment, leave a like, follow. Bye. Thank you for watching.